Is structured. We listened to all the presentations this morning, and our presentation is structured a little differently. We are going to be talking more about 3D printing and the requirements from the medical field, specifically the orthopedic field. And a slide in the end, we'll talk a little bit about PrinterPrezz and what we do in that space. But before I start, as you may have gained from a lot of these speakers, that there is a lot of interest in 3D printing, specifically additive manufacturing out there. Here's a quote from Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, where he said that using 3D printing, parts could be created at a fraction of the cost and time compared to traditional manufacturing. This is huge, But the key thing to realize that today additive manufacturing is mainly being driven by three industries: automobile, aerospace, and industrial. And the reason for that is that the applications in these industries are very similar. You're trying to create parts that have big parts that have high strength, high endurance, and low weight. The next frontier for additive is definitely medical. Medical is a big market which is looking at additive very closely, specifically orthopedic implants. But the requirements in medical are completely different than the other industries we spoke about earlier. Though endurance, strength, and weight is important, there are some other global trends that are taking place that we need to keep in mind. There is a big active aging population out there. Today in the US, 14% of the US population are 60 years and older. In the next 5 years, 30% of the US population are going to be 60 years and older. In Japan, 50% of the Japanese population is going to be 60 years and older. But the key thing to think about is not the fact that we have a big aging population. It's the fact that this aging population is actually very active. So if you think about our grandparents would sit in a rocking chair and live out their life, right? But today, people in their 70s and their 80s are getting implants because they want to walk, hike, they want to exercise, they want to have a lifestyle, which is very important. So if you look at the orthopedic implant space, it has grown almost 5x in the last 20 years. And it is just the beginning. These trends are not going to stop. So the need for AM in orthopedics is going to continue to grow significantly. The reason why AM helps in automobile or in aerospace is that it does something that traditional manufacturing can do. But in medical, the key thing to understand is a lot of these parts, specifically in the orthopedic space, cannot be created by traditional manufacturing. Traditional manufacturing is not even a competition for you because the characteristics that 3D printing gives is very unique to 3D printing. The reasons why 3D printing is very key for orthopedics is twofold. The first thing is, unlike aerospace and automobile where you have big engine parts that are going into cars and planes, in medical, your body can have parts of only a certain size that can go in there. So there's small parts, but you try to create these complex parts that look more like human bones. So the recovery is faster, the recovery is better. The second most important thing about medical is that there are only limited materials that can go in the human body. And luckily for additive, both titanium and PEEK, which is the majority of the material that goes in the human body, are very difficult to machine by traditional manufacturing. So 3D printing, actually from a material standpoint, along with the structure, actually has key benefits in orthopedics that traditional manufacturing just cannot do today. But why is this important? My next 4 or 5 slides, I'll talk about why are these structures important? Why is this material important? The key reason is that in the last decade, the 3D printing technology has evolved such that printers, the Stratus speaker spoke before this, have evolved to a place where you can create structures that are very bone-like. So they're closer to human bones. So you can design parts that are more bone-like. What is the advantage of having parts that look more like human bone? The big advantage of having parts that look more like human bone is that the body thinks it's human bone. So the body and the bones actually grow into these parts. So something that would take 2 or 3 weeks to recover after surgery and would have a lot of pain, you can recover in days because the body thinks it's another piece of human bone. So you heal faster, you recover faster, the life expectancy gets better. This is very key. This is the key reason why the orthopedic industry has been strongly pushing for 3D printing. But because the 3D printing industry has been focused on large automobile, large aerospace parts, the key requirements for medical have been lost. This is a key case. This is a paper that was published by Stryker. This shows that recovery in 3D printed titanium is much better than anything that can be done by traditional manufacturing. There's a similar paper that Zimmer put out. There are similar papers that J&J puts out. But there is a lot of data that has been proven in the last 10 years that using orthopedic devices that can be created, metal orthopedic devices that can be created only by 3D printing, recovery is faster and much better. A good example is SciBone. SciBone is actually a $400 million public spine company. 5 years ago, they used to manufacture all the devices using traditional manufacturing. 6% of their surgeons asked for a 3D printed device. Their market grew so much that they had to go IPO. Today, 90% of the devices are 3D printed, and they're a $400 million company on the stock market. But the key thing they say is that 3D printing provides characteristics around surface that help recovery to get faster, which is why they've been growing so quickly. And this is not a trend with any one company. There are 400 companies in the space that today in orthopedics are looking at 3D printing very closely. The main markets being spine, knees, hips, etc. What happens if you do not have a 3D printed device? What is the cost to a hospital? If you put a traditional manufactured device in your body and it fails, the cost is really big. For example, if you go for a spine surgery, the first time you go for surgery, it will cost you $30,000. And the hospital makes $15,000. The profit for the hospital is $15,000. If something goes wrong and the bone and the tissue does not grow into the implant, the second time you go to the hospital, it costs the hospital $150,000. And the hospital gets paid only $30,000. So revision, the characteristics around having devices that look like human bone, infection, are key things that are driving the orthopedic industry. This is the top 3 things that medical devices are pushing. And additive manufacturing is a key tool that can help with solving a few of these issues. The other big challenge in additive is this week we were in all across Singapore. We went to SynHealth, we went to NUHS, we visited all the hospitals, we gave a whole bunch of seminars. But the key feedback we get from every hospital is the same. A lot of medical devices have been developed by US companies and have been developed on the Caucasian population. The issue with that is that these devices get shipped from the US to Asia, and when you try and fit these devices into the Asian population, into the Indian population, into the Pacific Islander population, the rejection is much higher. Think about the previous slide. If rejection happens, cost of surgery goes from $30,000 to $150,000, so it's very expensive. So the fact that additive manufacturing can create mass devices that can be used to target races is a big value for medical networks across the world. AM is just the beginning. At PrinterPrezz, we are trying to target 2 key problems. The first problem is around additive manufacturing, and as I talked about it, to create devices that look more like human bone that can actually give you better performance. The second thing is infection. As you know, diabetes is a big issue. In the aging population, smoking is a big issue. This leads to a lot of infection in the older population. We are combining at PrinterPrezz advanced metal 3D printing with nanotechnology infection controls to get better devices that have lower revision. So save the hospital networks billions of dollars every year. With NAMIC, we have been mainly focusing on, NAMIC has been really supportive. We have been mainly focusing with NAMIC to take the technologies that we've developed in the US and bringing all this whole flow to the different hospital networks that exist in Singapore. You'd say, why Singapore? And there are a few reasons for that. One of the reasons is that Singapore does have this medical hub where people from, a lot of medical tourism happens in Singapore. The second reason is that the hospital networks in Singapore are very advanced medically. So they're looking to put in advanced devices, advanced surgery in spine and orthopedics does happen in Singapore. So in the next 18 months, we are actually looking at taking the 18,000 square feet facility that we today have in Fremont, California, and creating a mirror facility right here in Singapore to support the Asian market. So going back to who's PrinterPrezz, this is my last slide, and I'll talk very quickly about who we are and what we do. PrinterPrezz is actually the world's first medical foundry. We are very similar to TSMC. We are an end-to-end foundry that does surgeon education. We do design. We do 3D printing. We do nanotechnology. We do post-processing. And we do the whole FDA process under our roof. The reason we are different is that we have not only technologies coming from additive manufacturing, we've combined it from unique technologies that have come from the semiconductor side. Our COO comes from Apple. Our whole software backbone actually is very similar to the Apple software backbone. Our head of manufacturing comes from Tesla. So we've integrated technologies from multiple industries to create a unique clean room like fab that is used for orthopedic devices. We've signed 4 customers that we're taking through the FDA process right now, and the key advantages to our customers is that typically it takes a customer 5 to 6 years to do something in traditional manufacturing. We have taken these 4 customers all the way from design of orthopedic device or concept of orthopedic device to a packaged product in 10 months. The FDA cost, because we're sharing it among multiple customers, we are able to cut the cost of FDA down from the $10–15 million range it takes typically to get an FDA approval. All our 4 customers are getting their FDA approval done in less than $1 million. So how do we do that? We are very similar to Grab or Uber. If you think about it, if you buy a car, you pay $1,000 for a car, you have to learn how to drive, you pay for insurance, and you use the car 10% of the time. In our ecosystem, the cost is shared between, so when you go to Grab or Uber, you pay $10 or $12 because you just pay for the portion you used. But the car is being shared between 10 or 12 different customers. That's how we are able to reduce the time and cost as well. The fact that we have this end-to-end, all the way from concept to FDA model, that is shared between 10 to 15 customers, we are able to cut the time of development from years to months, and the cost of development or cost of FDA approval from $10 to $15 million to less than $1 million. Thank you.
All right, thank you.